Om Asato Ma Sadagamaya Tamaso Homaham Jyotirgamaya Mrityormam Amritam Gamaya Avir Avir Mairhi Rudra Yate Dakshinam Mukham Te Namaham Paha Inityam. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality, and reach us through and through ourselves, and evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. So my subject this morning is the harmony of religions. And we can begin by visualizing a painting that was commissioned by Surendranath Mitra, depicting Sri Ramakrishna pointing out to Keshab Chandra Sen. If you can visualize a church, a mosque, a Hindu temple, and the votaries of those religions standing outside, shaking hands in a spirit of goodwill. And that painting was meant to represent the Indian ideal of Sarva Dharma Samanvaya that we call the harmony of religions. Now, if we look back through the history of religion, we can see that it is anything but harmonious. And in fact, it's a history of contention, of friction, and of theological debate, and even physical warfare. The Roman pagans persecuted the early Christians. The Roman Catholics burned the Protestants at the stake. The whole of Christendom conducted 9 crusades into the land of the Muslims. And even today, the Muslims, with their doctrine of jihad, they are enjoined to slay the infidels. And even in India, we can see that there has been a lot of history of friction and contention and fanaticism among sects. There was once a great devotee, an ardent devotee of Lord Shiva. His name was Ganta Karna. And he worshipped Shiva, but he could not bear to hear or think about or read about or hear the names of any of the other of the Hindu deities. And in fact, when he walked through the streets, the young boys and the street urchins knew this about him, his fanaticism. And so when he walked by, they would call out, "Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna." And this just drove him to distraction. But he hit upon a plan of, he fixed to his ears little bells. And whenever he heard the sound of any other deity other than Shiva, he would shake his head, and those bells would ring, so he couldn't hear it. And so that's why he was called Ganta Karna, the bell-eared one. One day Ganta Karna was seated for worship in his shrine, and he had offered the fruits and flowers, and he was waving the incense, and he was in meditation. When he opened his eyes, there he saw on the in the shrine, Lord Shiva had decided to teach him a lesson. And he appeared before him in the form of Hari Hara. That means half Vishnu and half Shiva. So on the left side, as you're looking at the shrine, there on the left side is Vishnu. And then you have down the middle is the other line on the right side is Shiva. So Gandakarna, he was so happy to see Lord Shiva there. But when he looked more closely and he saw that the other half was Vishnu, oh, he was very vexed and angry. And when he saw that the incense which he had offered was going into the nostril, one of the nostrils of Shiva and of Vishnu, he rushed over there to that image and put some cotton in the left side of the Vishnu nostril so that he could not enjoy the incense. So this was, we see that's kind of the history of fanaticism, the history of Swami Vivekananda. When he, at the Parliament of Religions, as you know, he gave 6 talks at the Parliament. One of those talks addressed this problem which had characterized religion for so many down through the centuries. The title of his talk was Why We Disagree. Title, Why We Disagree. And, he told about a frog. There was once a frog who lived at the bottom of a deep well. And there there was a little surface of water there. He would eat the insects that had fallen into that water, and he had grown fat and sleek. And one day, to his surprise, he had a visitor drop in, literally. Another frog had been hopping along on the surface, and he fell into that well. Oh, well, hello, he said. How are you doing? What are you doing here? Well, I'm sorry, I fell into the well. I left my home there. I live up there in Lake Superior. And I got out of the lake and I was hopping along, I fell into your well. Oh, really? Said the other frog. Is that so? I've never heard of what is a lake. I don't know what that is. It's a big body of water. How big is it? Oh, he said, it's very big. You wouldn't understand. Well, is it this big? He said as he jumped across a little 18-inch surface of the water in his well. Is it this big? Oh, well, said the other frog, you can't compare. It's much bigger than that. Really? Amazing. Then he's going to double down. He jumped across again to the other side. Is it double this? Is this big? And the other frog said, you can't imagine. It's much, much bigger than this. How can you compare a lake to a little puddle of water like this? What? Said the frog. You must be lying. There couldn't be anything bigger than my pond. And so he just drove him up the wall, out of the well. And so that was the story. And we can see that this frog, the water, that little surface of water at the bottom of the well, that kind of represented his whole worldview. That was his world, And he had a worldview, and he had a belief system, and he thought that he couldn't imagine that there was anything different or possible or greater than what he experienced right there. He had a frog in the well mentality. Just as many followers of different sectarian religions who believe that there is only one theology, there's only one mythology, there's only one set of beliefs and practices, and those are the orthodox beliefs. Everything else is either is sectarian or is false. All other doctrines are false. There's only one religion which is true, and all of the others are false. That's kind of the prevailing idea for hundreds and hundreds of years in the history of religion. Swami Vivekananda, at the Parliament of Religion, he spoke on this very subject. And his message was that there's not one religion and all the others are false, but there are many religions, and they're all essentially true. And so, well, this is the thesis. This is one of the themes of the harmony of religions, that all religions are essentially true. What does that mean? True, true and necessary. The diversity is necessary. What do we mean by true? Well, true just means, I always think of true as like the word is for the oak tree. The oak tree is Drew. That's the Druids. Drew is true, so it's like an oak. You think of truth, you think of an oak tree. The roots go deep in the ground, it gives shade and comfort to passers-by. But also the leaves of the tree and the branches of the tree reach upward to the sky, so that when we're seated there under that tree enjoying the shade, we're now going to look up. We look upward, and those branches draw our attention upwards to heaven. And that's why people have always worshipped trees, because they point, like they're like fingers. They point to the moon. Each one is true in that it points to the ultimate reality. So all religions are essentially true and are necessary. Fundamental teaching of the all the orthodox Indian philosophies, that is the doctrine of karma, that each one of us has our own disposition, has our own destiny, has our own temperament and history and the whole plot line of our story of our life. And that we have our own dharma, we have our own swadharma, and that everyone basically has their own religion. And this morning we're not talking about what is religion. That's a different subject. We can imagine that each person has their own religion, and that the Lord of the universe, the Divine Mother of the universe in Indian mythology, she is great love for all of her children. She knows that she prepares dishes to suit the temperament and disposition of each different child. Some of the children like to eat spice curry. Others like pickled fish curry. Others enjoy the rich dish of fish pilau. Divine Mother makes all these dishes, each one for a dish suit, the temperament and the disposition of a different type of person. This is why we talk about unity in diversity. Diversity is essential. You can't have the unity without the diversity. These are the two sides of the same coin. So, this idea of the harmony of religions is based on an ancient discovery of the rishis, of the Vedas, who discovered in ancient times that truth is one. Vedanta, this is not, there's a big, the emphasis on truth. Truth with a capital T is sacred. The truth is one. Sages call it by different names: ekam, sat, vipra, bahuda, vadantyagnim, yamam, matarishwana, mahu. Those are the words from the Rig Veda, the oldest religious scripture in the world. And there it says, truth is one. Ekam sat, the Sanskrit word there is sat. Ekam sat vipra bahuda vadanti. Many sages call it by many names. That is the gods, different gods, Agni, Yama, Matarishwan. So many gods in the Hindu pantheon. But even in those ancient times, they realized that the truth is one. Our ultimate conception of this truth. What is the ultimate truth? Well, we can see our highest possible conception that we can have of truth is Satchidananda. That is, it is being. Being is the universal predicate of everything. You can't imagine any higher concept than being. And there's only one being. Because if there was something outside of being, it would be non-existent. There's only one being, there's only one consciousness. That is, if we want to give the highest generalization of what is the reality, we have to use the concept of consciousness. Consciousness is one only without a second, because whatever qualifies it is the object of consciousness. So consciousness equals being equals infinity. That is, there can only be one infinity. Mathematics, there are many potential infinities, but there's only one actual infinity. So this is the designation of truth in Vedanta. Satchit Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. This is the foundation for this idea of the unity of religions. And well, if we think about religions, we can think about people have different concepts. That is, everyone in a religion may agree that that there is one ultimate reality, and everyone generally in some religion. How many religions are there? Well, we may say that there are 5 major religions, but then we'd have to say, like with languages, we'd have to say maybe there's 7,000, 8,000 smaller religions. But everybody with a religion, that is, they believe that there is some ultimate reality. The highest conception that we can have of this ultimate reality, Satchidananda, is of a person. That means a divine person. So a religious person is somebody who believes that there is a divine person who has certain qualities: omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, omnibenevolence. That is his conception of God. Pretty much everybody in religion who considers themselves to be religious believes in God. Of course, in Vedanta, we know everyone believes in God. But that depends on a discussion of what is God. Let's leave that aside today. Everyone, in common parlance, if you're religious, that you believe in God. The only difference is we may agree on that, but even then, devotees of different religions will disagree on what is the nature of God. Is God a he? Is it a she? Is it an it? What is the name of God? That is, God has name and form. It has certain properties and qualities. And have different names? Should we call that God, that divine being, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Kali, Durga, Jehovah, Allah? These are all different names that we have for different aspects or different perceptions of what is the nature of God. Now, as philosophers, we can discriminate here between the nature of God and the name and the form, but ordinary people like ourselves, we really identify everything. All that we know is the name and the form. So it's normal that we quarrel, or we would disagree over what is the essential name and form of God. What is the real name and form? He may go by different names, but what is his natural name? What is his natural form? And, well, this doctrine of the harmony of religions teaches us that there is a unity in the diversity of conceptions of the names and forms of God. And we can imagine, for example, a great a tank. See, in India, they have tanks. Now, what's a tank? A tank is a big pond. I mean, it's a very big pond. And around the pond, there are different villages, maybe big enough where different villages are actually located around the pond. Each one maybe has a set of a bathing stairway that goes down into the water. And that's where they get their water, not their drinking water. They have a well, hopefully. But let's say that on the western bank, there is a family of Greeks. And on the northern bank, there's another families of Mohammedans. On the eastern side, there's families of Bengalis. And on the southern bank, there's some English people live there. And every day, the one Greek goes down there to the pond, maybe with a copper pot, and scoops up a whole pot full of agua, takes it home for their use and their washing in the house. And similarly, the Mohammedan comes down to the ghat, and maybe he has a plastic pitcher, and he fills it full of pani, and then he returns home. And the Bengali, of course, comes there with his classical clay pot. Everything in Vedanta is about the clay pot. So he comes down there with a clay pot, he fills that clay pot with jol, goes back home. Meanwhile, the Englishmen come up, they carry an old oaken bucket, wooden bucket, fill that bucket full of water. And so each one of them has filled their bucket. And all the buckets are of different forms, different shapes, and all the names of that substance in those different, all names are different, but we know very well that's all H2O. It's all what we call water. So there's no need, that's the kind of the ideal of the harmony of religions, that there's only one H2O, there's only one substantial being, and that is Satchidananda, that is the ultimate reality, which is perceived in different ways, in different forms, by different people, with different temperaments. And that is why that the Ahura, what do they call them? The Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, and the Vishnu of the Vaishnavas, and the Shiva of the Shaivites, and the Divine Mother of the Shaktas, and the Allah of the Mohammedans, and the Jehovah of the Christians, all refer to that same divine being appearing under different names in different forms. And when we see something that is in our visual field, what we usually see, we only see two things, really. The rest is our well, we see colors and we see shapes. So that's why when we talk here about our different aspects of God, our first perception of the appearance of God would have reference there to the color and to the shape. That's why Sri Ramakrishna tells about the traveler who was on his way to a village. And as he walked along the road, he saw by the side of the road, there was some trees in the forest. He saw on the branch of one of that trees, he saw a small creature, looked like a small lizard, although not really, because it has a kind of a notched back along the spine of the back, and it was a bright yellow color. And that color just caught his eye amidst the green leaves. And he wondered, what is it? I've never seen that before. Continued on his way into the village, sat down in a tea shop, and when the waiter came over, he remarked to that waiter, he said, I saw on my way here, I saw that there was a little animal seated on the branch of a tree near here. It's a bright yellow color. Oh, really? Said the waiter. I don't know. I've never seen that. Meanwhile, another traveler came in to the shop. And he ordered some tea, and he remarked to that waiter, I was coming along here, and I noticed it caught my eye. A small little creature on the branch, and it was a bright red color. Never seen anything like that before. Oh, really? What? He said, a red? You saw something, a red color? I saw yellow. Meanwhile, another traveler came into the tea shop, and he had seen the same thing. Only the color that he had seen was of a bright red color. And so they soon fell to arguing over what was this animal and what was the color. They decided, no need for us to argue. Let's just go back down the road and we'll see for ourselves what's going on there. So they went back, came to the same place, and there, what did they see? Well, they didn't see the animal on the branch, but there was a man, that is a sage, who was there under the tree. And they asked him about it. He said, did you see a yellow animal? Yes, I did. He said, well, I thought it was red. Yes, it is. And so like this, he affirmed the story of each one of them. And they were surprised. They said, well, how do you know? Well, he said, that's a chameleon. Appears in different colors. How do you know so much about that? They asked. Well, you see, I live here. This is where I stay. I'm standing here under the tree. I have understanding. I have a deeper understanding of what's going on. I know the nature of the animal. And so I've seen it, and they appear in different ways, under different colors. And so they learned their lesson there about how God appears in different forms. Similarly, about different colors, we read in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna about a village cloth merchant who was also a dyer of cloths. And so he had a big the pot of dye, and he had his little shop there by the side of the road. And people would come to him. They would have a cloth, and they would buy a length of white cotton cloth, and then they would bring that cloth to the dyer, And he'd say, yes, I'd like to have this cloth dyed yellow. And the dyer said, yes, no problem. Come back tomorrow. He put the cloth in the dye, pulled it out, bright yellow color, hung it up on the line, dried. The devotee came back, said, oh, they're beautiful. Thank you very much. Another customer came up and handed them a bolt of white cloth. I would like, what color would you like this? Well, I like this cloth, blue. Oh, yes. Okay, you put the cloth into the pot, pulls it out, it's blue. And, well, the very next day, another person came along, same thing. He said he dyed my cloth red. Put the cloth in thing, pulls it out, it's bright red. Hung it up on the line, he got it, and he was so happy. Meanwhile, there's another man who just next door, the shopkeeper next door, maybe, he was watching all this. And he noticed that how is this possible? And so he got a bright idea, because he also had some cloth that he wanted dyed. And so he took his cloth to that dyer, and he handed it to him. He says, sir, I'd like you to dye. Yes, really, what color would you like it dyed? So, well, I'd like it to be dyed the color of the dye in your pot. That was his request. So the dyer was put in some difficulty as to what was the color of his dye. What is the real nature of, what's the real color of the dye? What's the real color of the camellia? What is the real color of, what's the real shape and the name and the form of God? What's the real? That's a big question in linguistics, whole books written about it. What is real coffee? What color is her hair? What is her real color of her hair? What is a really good male? These are all different, many different meanings of this philosophical word in Vedanta, real. So we see here, anyhow, the theme or the thesis here is that there is a unity in the diversity of the conceptions of the name and form of God. This is the doctrine of the harmony of religions. Another aspect of that doctrine is that there is a unity in diversity of ends, that's of ends, of means to the end. We have an end, but you also have a conception of the means to the end. Now, even if religious people may agree on the end, such as in different denominations of any one religion, they may agree on the end to be achieved, but they will disagree on the means. And so if we ask, for example, a good Christian, how do we get to heaven? Well, he would say it's only through faith and good works. But if we were to ask a yogi in the Himalayas, how do we realize God? You say, well, you have to withdraw from the world and live in a cave in the Himalayas, and you have to meditate. That would be that's the only way you can do it. We ask a devotee or ask a Vaishnava, how can we realize God? Well, there's only one way, really. You have to have bhava, mahabhava, sing the name and glories of God and repeat his name. That's the only way that you can realize the great Lord Vishnu. And if you ask jnanis, what is the way? They'll say, well, obviously, it's only jnana removes ignorance. There's no other way. There's only one means, really, to realize the highest, the ultimate reality. is the idea of sectarian religions. That is, religious people who have the frog in the well mentality. That there's only one way. The teaching of the Vedanta philosophy is that there are many ways to realize God. There are many ways to realize the ultimate truth. Sri Ramakrishna tells about the different ways in which we can reach the roof of the house. You know, in some Indian villages, old-fashioned India, they had a house, gets very hot during the summer, and the house has a flat roof, so you can go up on the roof. You take the air there, and you get a cool breeze. And the question is, well, how do you get to the roof? Well, there are different ways. Some buildings, they have a stairway that you can walk up those stairs to reach the roof. But other smaller houses don't have such an exterior stairways. Maybe you have an interior stairway. You go up through a trap door. Maybe you can climb up by ladder. Or maybe you can climb up by a fire escape. Or some houses have these big bamboo poles that are like maybe 10 inches, 12 inches in diameter, and they're notched out. They form a very good ladder-like way. You just scamper right up to the roof of the house. So just so we see, what is the right way to get to this? Not only just one way to reach the roof. The roof is the ultimate reality. There are many different ways that we can come to reach the roof. No one is any better than any other. There's not one true way. That every way enables us to realize the truth. Sri Krishna says there in the Bhagavad Gita, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam tataiva bhajamyaham. Mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvashaha. I don't know all the verses in the Bhagavad Gita, but I do know a couple famous ones. And that's a famous one, which says that in whatsoever way man, like Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, Sri Krishna, who's like God, he says, in whichever way man approach me, in that very way do I appear to them. And people have different temperaments, different dispositions. All of them, in the end, come to me. So this is a teaching that all of the dharmas, in the end, reach to me. In English, we have the proverb, all roads lead to Rome. Let's unpack that proverb a little bit. All roads lead to Rome. Now, by Rome, of course, we mean the ultimate reality. What is Rome? Rome, of course, is the ultimate reality. It's that which is our human destiny, that which we seek to realize and which we seek to know, which is God realization, which is self-knowledge, which is Brahma-jnana, which we could call the Christian heaven of the Christians, nirvana. This is our highest ideal of our religion. That's Rome. All the roads lead to Rome. Roads here. Of course, when we think of a road, now a road is just a passageway that going from one place to another. And we know that we can think, well, there are big highways. There's superhighways. There's a freeway. Then there are state highways, maybe the 2-lane highways. But then there are also other, in a small town, in a city, there are streets and there are avenues. and their scenic drives and their boulevards all refer to different kinds of connotations of the word road. Well, they're dirt roads, they're dead-end roads, many different kinds of roads. Similarly, it is in religion. There are some major religions that spring to our mind. But then there, of course, each one of those has many denominations, and there are sects, and then there are regional religions, there are local, tribal religions. And so like this, there are many different roads that, when we say all the roads lead to Rome. And when we say that all the roads lead to Rome. Now we introduce a level here of more complexity. Because when we say all the roads lead to Rome, if we were to say, well, what about Sunset Boulevard? We drive down Sunset Boulevard to the very end, you're not going to get to Rome. So what does that mean? Well, that's why it says lead to Rome. As we go down Sunset Boulevard, and then we're going to turn, we're going to go down to the airport, we're going to board a plane, we're going to fly to Rome, we get off, there we are in Rome. That is, the Sunset Boulevard leads us to Rome. So similarly, every religion, we could say, it doesn't mean that it takes us all the way to Rome. So here we say it's like the conception here of religion, and here we have to introduce the ideal of hierarchy to our ideal of religious pluralism. The religions are like grades in a school. In a school, we know, our education, religion is like an education of the soul. We begin with a grade 1, 2, 3. We go through the grades. We go to junior high school. We go to high school. We're still not finished. We have to graduate. We go to college. We're still not finished. If we want to get a PhD, we can't get it at college. We have to go to a university. And so each one of the grades, the grade school leads to high school. The high school leads to college. College leads to the university. And by following the one after the other, we can attain our goal. So that's the ideal here of the harmony of religions, introducing the concept of hierarchy, which we discussed in some greater detail previous lectures when we talked about the ideal of the universal religion. So all roads lead to Rome. What about the word all? All. All the religions lead to Rome. Well, by religion essentially, we mean any set of beliefs and practices that enable us to realize the divinity within. That's a general definition of the essential definition of religion. Religion, we would also have, we assume here, a real, that is, we say all religions, we're assuming to all real religions. There's that word real again. That is, our road is a real religion. A religion is a religion which has both horizontal and vertical capability. That is, it harmonizes. It's a focus of horizontal harmony and a vertical transformation. so it's legitimate and it is authentic. And so insofar as we believe that all religions, that is, all real religions, are like oysters. And an oyster is like a shell, and inside the oyster there is a pearl. So similarly, all religions have an exoteric and an esoteric aspect. But at the heart of all religions is this transformative, this authentic, vertical practice which enables us to manifest the divinity within. Sri Ramakrishna says that we should respect and salute all different religions, that we ought not to disrespect any religion. And of course we have to, that's our practice. But at the same time, we know that there are many so-called religions that are in name only, and that there are certain cults with true believers following a false prophet. That's not a religion. And there are certain political ideologies that are pseudo-religions. They don't count as religions. And they demand our discrimination and our critical thinking. And so although we salute and have all the great religions, that we have to understand what is a religion and how religions help us to transform and manifest the divinity within us. The ideal of this harmony of religions. Translation of the Sanskrit, Sarva Dharma Samanvaya. This ideal of this, that is our ideal, is Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna, the saint of Dakshineshwar, which you know very well, he's the one who realized this ideal and who serves as the ultimate, the model for this, for religious pluralism with hierarchy. Sri Ramakrishna was a phenomenon. You can't label him, pigeonhole him as a Shakta, as a Shaivite, as a Vaishnava, as a Vedantin, as an Advaitin, as a dualist. You can't label him like that, although he realized the ideals of all these different approaches. And Sri Ramakrishna was not a theoretician. He was a practitioner. He practiced many different forms of all the different forms of spiritual practice that we can imagine. He realized God in all many different forms, under many different names and forms. He realized the ultimate reality in both within himself and in seeing God in everything. Realized God as the personal and impersonal. And thus all of the different configuration of religious truth we find embodied in the life of Sri Ramakrishna. And so it's the spirit of Sri Ramakrishna and his life that inspires us in this Vedanta movement to always make a conscious effort to extend tolerance and sympathy and, in fact, acceptance of all religions as true as the ideal of the harmony of religions. Announcements?
There should be a bulletin there.
Yeah.
We thank Swami Vedarupananda for his talk on the harmony of religions. And next week our speaker will be Swami Satyamayanda. He is speaking on encountering the great goddess. Swami Sarvadevananda is out of town. He'll be back on the 21st, next Sunday in the evening. And otherwise classes are going on Tuesdays at 4:30 and 7:30, except for this coming Tuesday. And Wednesdays at 7:30, Thursdays at 7:30, Saturdays at 10 a.m. And that's about it.
Om Dya Shanti Antariksha Shanti Prithivi Shanti Apo Shanti Oshadaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishwe Deva Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Same Shantirehi Om Shanti 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 Om. Peace is in heaven, peace is on the earth, peace is in the sky and the waters. The herbs and plants and trees are full of peace. The gods are peaceful. May this eternal universal peace enter our souls and beings. Om. Peace, peace, peace be unto us all.